Captain Marcus Thompson stood tall in his crisp Air Force uniform at Sewell International Airport. The morning sun shone through the large windows, making his captain's bars gleam. He had flown many types of planes in his 10 years of service, from small training aircraft to the biggest transport planes. Today, he was supposed to fly to Busan for an important meeting with Korean military leaders. The airport was busy with morning travelers. People rushed past him, pulling their suitcases and checking their phones. Marcus walked to the security checkpoint, holding his diplomatic papers and military ID. He had done this many times before at airports around the world. Next in line, called the security officer, Mr. Sung-ho Park. He was a man in his 40s with a stern face and cold eyes. When Marcus stepped forward, Sung-ho's expression changed. His eyes narrowed, and his mouth turned down at the corners. "Papers," Sung-ho said sharply, holding out his hand. His voice was different from how he had spoken to the passengers before Marcus. Marcus handed over his diplomatic papers and military ID with a polite smile. "Good morning, sir. I'm Captain Thompson from the United States Air Force. I have a flight to catch for a military meeting in Busan." Sung-ho looked at the papers as if they might be fake. He turned them over several times, holding them up to the light. People in line behind Marcus started to shuffle their feet, wondering why this was taking so long. "These need extra checking," Sung-ho announced loudly. He waved to another security officer. "Take his bags for special inspection." Marcus checked his watch. He had arrived 2 hours early, but this delay might be a problem. "Sir, I have all the right papers. Is there something specific you need to check?" "We have our procedures," Sung-ho said, not looking at Marcus. He typed something into his computer very slowly, one key at a time. "Wait here." Marcus watched as other travelers went through the security line quickly. A businessman in a suit walked through after just a brief check. A group of tourists passed with only basic screening. But Sung-ho kept Marcus waiting. "Sir," Marcus tried again, his voice still calm and professional. "I'm on a diplomatic mission. These papers are from both the U.S. and Korean governments. Could you please tell me what the problem is?" Sung-ho looked up, his face hard. "Are you telling me how to do my job? Maybe in America, you can do what you want. But this is Korea. Here, you follow our rules." The way Sung-ho said it made several nearby people look uncomfortable. A young Korean woman in a business suit frowned at Sung-ho's tone. An older man shook his head slightly. Marcus thought about his achievements. He had graduated top of his class at the Air Force Academy. He had flown presidents and generals. He had earned medals for his service. But here he was, being treated like a suspicious person because of how he looked. More security officers arrived to check Marcus's bags. They opened everything, taking out each item slowly. His carefully packed uniform for the military meeting was unfolded. His laptop was swabbed for explosives. His toiletries were tested one by one. Through it all, Marcus kept his composure. He remembered what his father had told him. "Sometimes, son, you have to be twice as good to be treated half as well. But never let them see you lose your cool." The clock on the wall kept ticking. Other passengers came and went. Sung-ho seemed to take pleasure in the delay, a small smile appearing on his face whenever he looked at Marcus's growing concern about the time. Little did Sung-ho know that his actions today would start a chain of events that would change both their lives. Marcus Thompson wasn't just any pilot, and this wasn't just any flight. The consequences of Sung-ho's discrimination would reach far beyond this security checkpoint, touching the highest levels of both Korean and American military relations. The security check had already lasted 45 minutes. Captain Marcus Thompson stood patiently as Sung-ho Park made a show of checking his papers for the 4th time. The morning crowd had thinned, but new passengers were arriving for the afternoon flights. "There seems to be a problem with your military ID," Sung-ho announced loudly, though he had already verified it with his supervisor twice. "Sir," Marcus said quietly, "that ID has been checked by your security team multiple times." Is there something specific you're concerned about? Sung-ho's face hardened. You Americans think you can just walk in anywhere. Show me your flight orders again. Marcus took out his flight orders, which were printed on official U.S. Air Force letterhead with both English and Korean text. A senior Korean general had signed them personally. While Sung-ho pretended to study the papers, another security officer, Ms. My-sun Cho, approached. She had been watching the situation with growing concern. Mr. Park, she said in Korean, I've checked his credentials. They're valid. We should let him proceed. Sung-ho waved her away. I'm in charge here. Go check the other passengers. My-sun looked at Marcus apologetically before walking away. She pulled out her phone and began typing quickly. Empty your pockets again, Sung-ho demanded. Everything out. Marcus had already done this 3 times, but he complied. He placed his wallet, phone, and keys in the plastic bin. His movements were calm and deliberate. And your watch, Sung-ho added with a smirk. This is my Air Force graduation watch, Marcus explained. I've worn it through every security checkpoint in the world without issues. Are you refusing the security officer's request? Sung-ho's voice grew louder, drawing attention from nearby passengers. An elderly Korean man in line spoke up. This is shameful, he said in English. The officer is being very unprofessional. Sung-ho spun around. This is a security matter. Please mind your own business. Marcus checked the time again. His diplomatic flight was scheduled to leave in 30 minutes. The Korean generals waiting in Busan would not be pleased by his absence. Mr. Park, Marcus said firmly but politely, I understand you have a job to do. But I am a United States Air Force officer on a diplomatic mission. My credentials have been verified multiple times. What specific security concern do you have? Sung-ho stepped closer, lowering his voice. People like you don't give orders here. This isn't America where you can play pilot. The racial undertone was clear. Several nearby passengers gasped. My-sun, who had returned, looked shocked. I'd like to speak with your supervisor, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the insult. My supervisor is busy, Sung-ho replied with a smirk. And you'll miss your flight if you wait. Maybe you should go home instead. At that moment, a group of Korean Air Force officers walked through the nearby VIP security lane. They noticed Marcus's uniform and the growing tension. Your bag needs another check, Sung-ho announced, signaling for yet another inspection. Marcus watched as the clock ticked past his boarding time. His carefully pressed uniform was wrinkled from repeated searches. His laptop's battery had died from all the forced restarts for security checks. In the distance, he heard his flight being announced for final boarding. Sung-ho's smile grew wider. What Sung-ho didn't notice was My-sun quietly filming the entire incident on her phone. She had also sent several urgent messages to the airport's chief of security, Ms. Jae-yoon Kim. Marcus Thompson had faced discrimination before, but never had it interfered with a diplomatic military mission. As his flight departed without him, he knew this incident would have consequences far beyond what Sung-ho could imagine. The day was far from over. Captain Marcus Thompson watched through the airport window as his flight took off without him. The large military transport plane rose into the clear morning sky, carrying the documents and presentations he was supposed to deliver to the Korean generals in Busan. Sung-ho Park stood nearby, arranging papers at his security desk with obvious satisfaction. He had succeeded in his goal. The black American officer had missed his flight. Other security officers avoided looking at Sung-ho, clearly embarrassed by his behavior. Marcus's phone rang. It was Colonel David Wilson, his commanding officer. Thompson, where are you? The Korean generals just called. They're waiting in Busan. Sir, Marcus responded professionally. I apologize, but I was delayed at security. Mr. Park, the security officer, held me for extended screening. Despite having diplomatic papers and military ID, he prevented me from boarding. There was a long pause on the line. Did he give a reason? No official reason, sir, but his comments made his motivations clear. The colonel's voice became stern. "Stay where you are, Captain. I'm calling the embassy now." At that moment, Ms. Jae-yun Kim, the airport chief of security, walked quickly toward the checkpoint. She had received urgent messages from my son about the incident. Her face showed serious concern as she reviewed something on her tablet, likely the security footage my son had sent. "Mr. Park," Jae-yun called out sharply. "In my office. Now." Sung-ho's satisfied expression faded. He had not expected his supervisor to appear so quickly. "I'm conducting important security checks," he protested. "Officer, my son will cover your position," Jae-yun replied firmly. She turned to Marcus and bowed slightly. "Captain Thompson, please come with us. We need to document what happened here." As they walked to her office, Marcus noticed increased activity around the security area. Airport staff were reviewing camera footage. Several Korean Air Force officers who had witnessed the incident were giving statements to airport security. In Jae-yun's office, the atmosphere was tense. She sat behind her desk, looking at her computer screen with a deep frown. "Captain Thompson, I have reviewed the security footage from the past 2 hours," she said in clear English. "What happened here is unacceptable. Mr. Park, would you like to explain your actions?" Sung-ho shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I was following security protocols." "Which protocols?" Jae-yun asked sharply. "The ones where you checked the same documents 4 times, or when you made inappropriate comments about American officers." Marcus sat quietly, maintaining his professional composure. His phone buzzed with messages from the embassy and his superior officers, but he focused on the meeting. "We have strict security procedures," Sung-ho insisted, but his voice was less confident now. "I have been chief of security for 8 years, Jae-yun responded. "These were not our procedures. This was deliberate harassment of a diplomatic military officer." She turned to Marcus. "Captain Thompson, I deeply apologize for this incident. We will be filing a formal report, and there will be consequences." Marcus nodded. "Thank you, Ms. Kim. My concern now is the missed meeting in Busan. There were several high-ranking officers waiting." "Yes, this is a serious diplomatic issue," Jae-yun agreed. She looked at Sung-ho. "You delayed an official U.S. military officer on a diplomatic mission. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done?" The color drained from Sung-ho's face as he finally realized the full implications of his actions. This was no longer about making one passenger miss a flight. He had interfered with military cooperation between 2 allied nations. Outside the office, phones were ringing at the U.S. Embassy, the Korean Defense Ministry, and various military commands. What had started as one security officer's prejudice was quickly becoming an international incident. The afternoon sun filled Jae-yun Kim's office as she reviewed security footage from multiple cameras. On her computer screen, she could clearly see how Sung-ho Park had treated Captain Marcus Thompson differently from other passengers. The evidence was impossible to ignore. "This is deeply troubling," Jae-yun said to my son Cho, who sat across from her desk. "You did the right thing by recording and reporting this." My son nodded. "I have worked with Mr. Park for 3 years. He has done similar things before, but never this serious." Meanwhile, in a conference room at the U.S. Embassy in Seoul, Marcus sat with embassy officials and his military superiors. Colonel Wilson had flown in from the base as soon as he heard about the incident. "Walk us through everything that happened, Captain," Colonel Wilson said, his face serious as he took notes. Marcus explained each detail professionally, without emotion. He described how Sung-ho had checked his papers repeatedly, made inappropriate comments, and deliberately delayed him until he missed his flight. "Did anyone else witness this?" asked Ms. Linda Chen, the embassy's legal advisor. "Yes, several people," Marcus replied. "A Korean Air Force group saw part of it. Officer My Son Cho recorded some of it, and many passengers watched it happen." Back at the airport, Jae-yun had discovered something even more concerning. She was looking through old complaint files that had been marked resolved by Sung-ho's previous supervisor, Mr. Dong-Hyuk-yoon. "Look at this pattern," she said to her assistant. The computer screen showed multiple complaints about Sung-ho's behavior toward foreign travelers, especially those from minority backgrounds. All the complaints had been dismissed without proper investigation. Jae-yun picked up her phone and dialed a number. "This is Chief Kim. I need to speak with Minister Lee's office immediately. It's about a diplomatic security incident." At that moment, Sung-ho sat alone in a small office, writing his incident report. His hand shook slightly as he typed. The reality of his situation was finally sinking in. This wasn't like the other times when complaints had quietly disappeared. In another part of the airport, a group of Korean generals had just landed from Busan. They had flown back to Seoul after their important meeting was canceled due to Marcus's forced absence. Their faces showed clear displeasure as they walked into a private meeting room. "This is unacceptable," General Kim said to his colleagues. "Captain Thompson was bringing crucial information about our joint training exercises. Now everything is delayed." Ms. Ha-won Lee, from the Defense Ministry, arrived at the airport next. She went straight to Jae-yun's office, carrying a thick folder of diplomatic protocols that Sung-ho had violated. "The minister wants hourly updates," Ha-won said as she sat down. "This incident could affect our military cooperation with the United States." Jae-yun showed her the security footage. "It's worse than we thought. Look at these past complaints we found." As they talked, Marcus was finishing his official statement at the embassy. Despite the stress of the day, he remained professional and focused. He had dealt with prejudice before, but this time was different. This time, there would be real consequences. "Captain," Colonel Wilson said, "the Korean Military Command has requested a meeting with you tomorrow. They want to apologize in person and discuss rescheduling the training presentation." Marcus nodded. What had started as one security officer's prejudice had grown into something much larger. The incident was now reaching the highest levels of both governments, and Sung-ho's actions had unknowingly set in motion changes that would affect the entire airport security system. The next morning, a large conference room at the Ministry of Defense buzzed with activity. Military officers from both Korea and the United States filled the space. At the center of the room sat Captain Marcus Thompson, still in his perfectly pressed uniform despite yesterday's ordeal. Minister of Defense Tae-won Choi looked at the security footage playing on the large screen. The room was silent as they watched Sung-ho Park's discriminatory behavior unfold. When the video ended, Minister Choi turned to Marcus. "Captain Thompson," he said in formal English, "on behalf of the Republic of Korea, I express our deepest regrets for this incident. This behavior does not represent our values or our respect for our American allies." Marcus maintained his professional demeanor. "Thank you, Minister Choi. I appreciate your personal attention to this matter." Ha-won Lee, standing near the minister, opened a thick folder. "The incident has revealed serious problems in our airport security system. We found evidence of other discriminatory incidents that were hidden." General Kim, who had missed yesterday's meeting in Busan, spoke next. "Captain Thompson was bringing essential information about our joint air defense exercises. This delay affects both our nation's security preparations." In another room at the airport, Jae-yun Kim interviewed more security officers. Each one shared stories about Sung-ho's past behavior and how their previous supervisor, Dong-Hyuk-yoon, had ignored their reports. "He told us to stay quiet," one young officer said. Mr. Yoon said complaints would make the airport look bad. Meanwhile, at the U.S. Embassy, Colonel Wilson met with diplomatic officials. The incident had caught the attention of Washington. The State Department wanted answers about how an American military officer on diplomatic business had faced such treatment. "This goes beyond one bad security officer," Colonel Wilson explained. "The system that allowed this to happen needs to change." Back at the Defense Ministry, Marcus presented his delayed briefing about the joint military exercises. The Korean generals listened carefully, but they couldn't forget why they were meeting a day late. During a break, Ha-won approached Marcus. "Captain, we found something interesting." Mr. Park had applied to the Korean Air Force years ago, but was rejected. He seems to have held a grudge against military pilots, especially foreign ones. Marcus raised his eyebrows. This explains some of Sung-ho's anger, but not his racial prejudice. Minister Choi called the room back to order. This incident will lead to changes. We are implementing new security protocols and anti-discrimination training immediately. As the meeting continued, Jae-yeon arrived with more evidence. Her team had discovered that Sung-ho and his former supervisor had deliberately hidden or destroyed previous complaints from foreign travelers. We have identified 27 similar incidents in the past year alone, Jae-yeon reported. Many involved military personnel from allied nations. The minister's face darkened. This was no longer just about one missed flight. It was about trust between allies and Korea's reputation in the international community. Captain Thompson, Minister Choi said, "Your professionalism during this incident is commendable. But it should never have happened. We will make this right." The day ended with a formal dinner where both Korean and American officials discussed ways to strengthen their military partnership. Marcus sat at the main table, representing not just himself, but the importance of addressing discrimination in all its forms. As he looked around the room, Marcus thought about how Sung-ho's actions had backfired completely. Instead of humiliating one black officer, he had sparked changes that would affect international military relations for years to come. 1 week after the incident, Sung-ho Park sat nervously in a large hearing room at the Seoul Airport Administration Building. Before him sat a panel of 9 officials, including representatives from airport security, the Defense Ministry, and the Diplomatic Corps. Jae-yeon Kim stood at a podium, presenting the results of her investigation. Behind her, a screen showed charts and documents detailing years of discriminatory incidents. Over the past 3 years, Jae-yeon reported, Mr. Park has detained or delayed 127 foreign travelers without valid security reasons. 43 of these were military personnel from allied nations. The panel members wrote in their notebooks. Sung-ho's face grew pale as his actions were laid bare. Furthermore, Jae-yeon continued, Mr. Park's former supervisor, Dong-hyuk-yoon, helped hide these incidents. They deleted complaints and pressured other officers to stay quiet. In the back of the room, my son watched with other security officers. Their testimony about Sung-ho's past behavior had helped build the case against him. The head of the panel, Director Sang-min Kang, looked directly at Sung-ho. Mr. Park, what do you have to say about these findings? Sung-ho stood up slowly. His usual confidence was gone. I was following security procedures, he said weakly. No, Director Kang replied firmly. The evidence shows you created unnecessary procedures to target specific passengers. Your actions have damaged our airport's reputation and our international relationships. At that moment, Dong-hyuk was brought into the room. The former supervisor looked tired and worried. The investigation had revealed his role in covering up years of discrimination. Mr. Yoon, Director Kang said, your failure to address these incidents made you equally responsible. Both of you violated our most basic principles of fairness and respect. In another office nearby, Captain Marcus Thompson met with Korean Air Force officials. They were planning the rescheduled joint training exercises, but everyone knew this meeting was about more than military cooperation. Your incident exposed serious problems in our system, General Kim told Marcus. Because of you, we are making real changes. Back in the hearing room, Jae-yeon presented more evidence. She showed security videos of other incidents where Sung-ho had targeted foreign travelers, especially those from minority backgrounds. This was not one mistake, Jae-yeon explained. This was a pattern of discrimination that went unchecked for years. The panel members listened carefully. This hearing would set new standards for airport security across Korea. Finally, Director Kang announced the panel's decision. Mr. Park, you are immediately terminated from your position. Mr. Yoon, you are also terminated. Both of you are permanently banned from working in airport security in Korea. Sung-ho slumped in his chair. His career was over. His actions against one American officer had brought down not only himself, but also the supervisor who had protected him. Additionally, Director Kang continued, "We are implementing new anti-discrimination policies at all Korean airports. Every security officer will undergo mandatory training. We are establishing an independent review board to handle complaints." As Sung Ho and Dong Hyuk left the hearing room in disgrace, other security officers watched. This day would be remembered as a turning point in Korean airport security. Later that evening, Jae-yun called Marcus to inform him of the results. "Your dignity in facing discrimination helped create positive change," she told him. "We are grateful." Marcus thought about how Sung Ho's attempt to humiliate him had led to widespread reforms. Sometimes, he realized, standing firm against discrimination could change entire systems. 3 months after the incident, Captain Marcus Thompson returned to Seoul International Airport. This time, everything was different. As he walked through the terminal, he noticed new signs in multiple languages explaining passenger rights and security procedures. At the security checkpoint, My Sun Cho, now promoted to Chief Security Officer, greeted him personally. "Welcome back to Korea, Captain Thompson," she said with a warm smile. "We have made many changes since your last visit." The security area looked more organized. Officers wore new badges with their names clearly displayed in both Korean and English. Above each checkpoint, electronic screens showed wait times and passenger rights information. "Our new training program is working well," My Sun explained as they walked. "Every officer must complete anti-discrimination courses before starting work. We also have monthly reviews of security footage to ensure fair treatment." Marcus noticed the security officers treating all passengers with equal respect. People moved through the checkpoints efficiently, regardless of their appearance or nationality. In the airport's main conference room, a ceremony was about to begin. Minister Choi and several generals had gathered for an important announcement. Marcus sat in the front row, his uniform perfectly pressed. "Today marks a new chapter in Korean-American military cooperation," Minister Choi announced. "Thanks to Captain Thompson's dignity in facing discrimination, we have improved not just our airport security, but our entire approach to international relations." Jae-hyun Kim, recently promoted to Director of National Airport Security, presented the new security guidelines. "These changes affect all Korean airports," she explained. "We now have clear procedures that ensure fair treatment while maintaining strict security standards." The American ambassador stepped forward next. Captain Thompson's experience led to positive changes. "Today, we're announcing expanded military cooperation between our nations, including more joint training exercises." After the ceremony, Marcus visited the Security Training Center. New officers watched training videos showing proper procedures and examples of discriminatory behavior to avoid. His own incident had become a teaching tool for preventing discrimination. "Your case changed everything," one trainer told him. "Now, security officers understand that discrimination has real consequences." Later that day, Marcus met with Korean Air Force pilots preparing for the joint exercises. They treated him with great respect, knowing how his professional behavior during the incident had strengthened military ties between their countries. "We are honored to fly with you," said Captain Jin-ho Kim, the lead Korean pilot. "Your strength changed our system for the better." At the end of the day, Marcus stood at the same window where he had watched his flight leave without him 3 months ago. But now he saw something different, a better, fairer system that he had helped create. Ha-won Lee joined him at the window. "Sometimes good things come from bad experiences," she said thoughtfully. "Your incident exposed problems we needed to fix. Now we are stronger." Jae-hyun approached them with more good news. "The new security system is being studied by other airports in Asia. They want to implement similar anti-discrimination policies." Marcus smiled, thinking about how Sung Ho's discrimination had backfired completely. Instead of humiliating one black officer, he had sparked changes that were spreading across the region. As the sun set over Seoul Airport, Marcus prepared to board his flight for the joint exercises. This time, The security check was quick, professional, and fair, exactly as it should have been 3 months ago. "Safe travels, Captain Thompson," my son called as he walked to his gate. "Thank you for helping us become better." 6 months after the incident, Seoul International Airport had become a model for fair security practices in Asia. On a bright morning, Captain Marcus Thompson landed in his military transport plane, leading a group of American pilots for the largest joint training exercise ever conducted between the two nations. As his plane taxied to a stop, Marcus saw a line of Korean Air Force officers waiting to greet him. Among them stood Jae-yun Kim, now the National Director of Airport Security, and my son Cho, the new Chief of Security Operations. "Welcome back, Captain Thompson," Jae-yun said warmly. "Your return marks a special day for us." The airport had changed significantly. New international security experts were visiting to study the anti-discrimination systems implemented after Marcus's incident. Signs in multiple languages welcomed travelers from all backgrounds, and security officers worked efficiently while treating everyone with respect. In the parking garage of the airport, a man in a blue uniform watched the military ceremony from a distance. It was Sung-ho Park, now working as a parking attendant. He had lost not only his security job, but also his reputation. Every day, he watched pilots and military officers pass through the airport while he collected parking tickets. "Your parking ticket, sir," Sung-ho said quietly to a customer, his voice lacking its former arrogance. Through the garage entrance, he could see the honor guard welcoming Marcus and his team. Inside the terminal, Marcus met with General Kim and other high-ranking officers. They were preparing for 2 weeks of advanced flight training that would strengthen the alliance between their nations. "Because of what happened here," General Kim said, "we reviewed practices at all military cooperation points between our nations. We found and fixed many problems we didn't know existed." Minister Choi joined them, carrying good news. "Other countries are adopting our new security model. What began as one man's discrimination has led to positive changes across Asia." Later that day, Marcus walked through the security checkpoint where the incident had occurred. The difference was remarkable. Officers smiled professionally at all passengers. Wait times were shorter. Most importantly, everyone received the same respectful treatment. My son showed Marcus the new training center named in his honor, the Thompson Center for Security Excellence, she said proudly. "Here, we teach officers how to maintain security while respecting human dignity." From his post in the parking garage, Sung-ho watched military planes take off and land. Each aircraft reminded him of his failed attempt to stop one black pilot from flying. Instead, his actions had made that pilot a respected figure in Korean military circles. As the day ended, Marcus prepared to lead the first training flight. Looking down at Seoul from the cockpit, he thought about how one difficult morning had sparked lasting change. "Captain Thompson," the control tower called, "you are cleared for takeoff. Thank you for helping make our skies and our ground safer for everyone." The plane rose into the evening sky, carrying with it the promise of stronger international cooperation and fairer treatment for all travelers. Below, in his parking booth, Sung-ho Park watched the aircraft disappear into the clouds, finally understanding the full cost of his prejudice. Marcus's response to discrimination had created something powerful, a system where dignity and security worked together, where every traveler could expect fair treatment, and where one person's stand against prejudice had improved life for countless others.